Welcome to the Mindfully Gay podcast, where queer wisdom meets real life conversation about healing, identity, and connection.
Today we're talking about adult gay friendships, what makes them hard to build, how apps like Grindr or Scruff influence the way we connect, and why your authenticity is your greatest asset.
We'll also share ideas for creating genuine friendships, rooted in our values, talents, and personal magic.
Let's get into it.
Well, good morning and welcome to Mindfully Gay.
Hello.
And it is, it's the end of February.
Yes, at the time of this recording, yes.
At the time of this recording, which means you'll be getting it in springtime. But there was a snowstorm yesterday.
Yeah, we are still in the I was going to say the heat of winter. Is that what you say? In the dead of winter, the cold of winter. It's snowing. It's cold. We're ready for spring.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited for this topic, and I was pondering if we have talked about this before, but I don't know, it feels relevant again, and maybe just because of the circumstances we find ourselves geopolitically. And I know as a therapist, I'm seeing a lot of people scrambling to find support systems.
Oh.
But we talking about adult friendships.
Adult friendship, yeah.
I thought you had originally said adult entertainment, and I was much more excited.
We could do like 2 or 3 episodes on that.
But we want to talk about friendship. No. So I'm going to let you lead out.
Okay, well, I think you're right. We have kind of touched on this a bit in other ways in different episodes, but I think just to really kind of, drill down and talk, what is adult friendship and how to, make friends as adults. Why does it seem like it's such a challenge to make friends and keep friends as we're getting older? And what's kind of sparked the topic was actually a Instagram reel that you had sent me, which I just rewatched, which I thought was fascinating. And one of the things that they kind of touched on, and maybe this can be our little springboard here, is that, socializing and making friends as a kid, adolescent, preteen, etc., is much more, it's just easier compared to as you become a young adult and later adulthood. And part of that was some things that she points out are, one is, your age, proximity, interests, things like that. You're growing up in a neighborhood, let's say, but school is a big thing. And having kids around you of your same age, same milestones, going to different levels of grades at the same time, maybe same interests like sports or extracurricular activities, you automatically make friends. You're just in the context of socialization, so you make friends. And that just kind of shapes your, movement through those developmental parts of your life. But things shift significantly as you get into your 20s and maybe have the opportunity to go to college, where you might move away, or your friends might move away, different interests because maybe you have different majors. You're moving away to go to a different school. I mean, so there's so many factors that go into either maintaining, creating a friendship and maintaining a friendship. Because some of those factors that we had as a kid aren't there anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting that as a young person, we're just in the context of making friends. Yeah. But as we get older, it's a little different. She has 2 names for it. As a kid, making friends is a group sport because it's all kind of interactive. And as you get older, it becomes an individual sport. You're kind of on your own.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was reflecting on 2 things. One, how much plays into, like she said, when you're growing up, you kind of have these shared interests and shared kind of experiences. Mm-hmm. But as you age and individualize, right? Then your interest, like here in Utah, right? 65 plus percent of the population is LDS, Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
And Mormon communities are organized by ward and stakes. You go to church with your neighbors. You participate in church activities with your neighbors. And so there's always this quick assessment. Like, for instance, in our little neighborhood in Sandy, we're known as the gay couple, but we're probably one of the few non-Mormons. And it's interesting, the neighbors that we're the most connected with are the people across the street who are non-Mormons.
Non-Mormon.
But it's like the Mormons kind of have this hesitation to reach outside their circle. And then I know I have this kind of projection that they are unlikely to be interested in connecting with us because we're not aligned with them religiously, morally, or politically, probably.
Right. Yeah.
As evidenced by the only Harris campaign sign in the neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
Although I will say that when we have flown our gay and trans flags, we always get some kind of a secretive note under our doormat that says, "Oh, thank you."
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, no hate, just that one brick. But no.
But you don't know where the note came from. Is it like an anonymous note, or
No, one time there was a kid who actually stopped by
Oh, wow.
and identified themselves as trans and appreciated the support.
Oh, wow.
But no, it's usually written on some piece of mail or an envelope or something, and they sneak up there, and we're not smart enough to turn on the camera on our front porch, so we can't see who it is. But yeah, we digress. So, and I also think the other thing that's different than when we grew up is social media.
Oh, true.
Because I think social media gives this illusion, and I'm going to use that word very deliberately. I love social media, mostly.
I hear you. I'm with you.
And when I'm trying to manage stuff on it, it's too much. But social media gives us the illusion that we're somehow connected to like-minded people. But then everyone becomes a social media activist. Everyone has an opinion. It's also a place where a lot of disagreements are very freely aired that would not necessarily happen in person, I don't think.
Yeah. And would you say, I mean, it begs the question, yes, there's social media and it gives the illusion of connection, but does that translate to friendship?
Oh, I think it has potential. I think we get lazy.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah. Because I certainly have made some friends via social media.
Right.
But it's not a place where I'm out to create friendships and certainly have long-lasting friendships, all via social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very different.
But when I knew we were going to talk about this today, when I was driving over here, I was thinking, like, who stands out in my mind as like people I would confide in if I were struggling or needed some help or assistance. And I often think of friendship as a bullseye, as a target, right? And in the middle is a bullseye. And in that bullseye are like the people that I feel the most intimate connection with, that I feel like I could talk about anything or everything. And I would say that that's probably reserved for very few people. But then like a target, right? There's different rings.
Right.
And so the next ring would be maybe just a little tiny lesser value to that. And what I know about maybe the two inner rings, if you will, is those are relationships that are easy to tend to. And I sometimes, because I hear a lot I think this thing of loneliness and feeling isolated is a pretty big phenomenon. In fact, there's a lot of articles written in psychological journals and discussion boards where loneliness is becoming rather epidemic. And and I hear a lot of it in my office. And I think what I'm hearing in particular are a lot of expectations that don't get met, or things don't feel reciprocal, and that the value of the relationship is somewhat dependent on those components. And I sometimes wonder if those are fair ways of assessing relationship or friendship.
Well, I think it's a good place to kind of start pondering those questions. And I tend to agree as far as that image of the target and the bullseye and the rings that go out. Because I certainly have, I would consider, a small group of people, you included, that I consider my closest friends, where I can go to you kind of for anything. I feel like I can, and you've shown up for me. I'm gonna get emotional. And you're very right. It's those relationships you really don't have to work hard at, because it's just natural. It's just there. It's also based on unconditional love, where there's no expectations. Like, well, I did that for you, I'm expecting that from that's not that. It's
Right.
not that. It's just that we are here for each other no matter what, and hard times, good times, and all the stuff in between. And even if we didn't have contact for a significant amount of time, and then we came back together, it's as if no
Pick
time.
right up.
Yeah, we can just
Yeah.
pick right up. It's that kind of relationship. And then kind of that outer ring, it seems like that the farther out we go, the more effort one has to put into creating and establishing and maintaining that friendship, that connection, where you got to pick up the phone and call, or you got to knock on the door, send that text, like, where are you? And sometimes I think in those middle rings, you have a closeness with someone. I'm just thinking of my own circles. These are people I've known for a long time. I consider them close, but maybe not as close as they are as some folks who are sitting in that middle bullseye section. But in a way, there's some conditions around it, and where I don't know how to say it. There's some expectation in each other's behaviors and how we act towards each other. It's like someone might come to me, or I might go to them because they need something, and that's the only time we might make a connection. And we're happy to help, but that's like the only time that we connect. It's not just because they're there, and through good times and hard times. So very different.
Well, I know there's, you mentioned our relationship. And I think what we have this morning ritual. Good morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Only because I know you've been awake for 4 hours when I wake up at 5. And I'm like, good morning. And it does, Charles is another good example. I love Charles to death, and I check in on him once or twice a week. And sometimes we will have an hour conversation. And sometimes it's like, hey, I got to get to work. All right, love you, bye. And, we hang up the phone. But I like this observation you're making about, I'll use us as an example. I feel like my connection with you is not dependent on showing up or responding in some particular way. If there's an opportunity or an invitation to include you or invite you to something, I'm just like, oh, that's something that John would like to do, right? Like, you're just in my consciousness. Nick's a good example because we follow these interesting Instagram threads around working out things. And every once in a while, something kind of unusual pops up. I think, well, that's a good one to send to Nick. or something that's a conversation that we had. Charles is always sending interesting, but I think I never think about, oh, well, Nick hasn't sent me something in a while, or John hasn't said good morning in a while. Because there's some kind of confidence, there's some kind of sense of connection that just doesn't place conditions on it.
Correct. Yeah.
And what's interesting, and maybe it's intuition, I don't know if I want to throw it into that category, but there are times where I think, oh, something's off. Are you okay? What's going on? Right? Or with Nick or John, or right? It's just kind of, there are times you're going to say, hey, or is it time to do a lunch? Or is it, let's get together? Which to me is just because there's kind of like this rhythm. I think it was last night, maybe the night before, Bruce was like, hey, did you check in with John about this and that? And I said, it's 6:30. He's in bed.
You know my rhythm.
I tell him, remind me in the morning and I'll send him a text. Right? But yeah, I know that about you. And I think, okay, I don't want to get into space. I know that you start powering down, for instance, at 5:30, 6 o'clock. So that when it's time to go to bed, you can easily go to bed. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about some of my close friends, and I have some close friends. I have some friends in Colorado that I would consider very close. And we don't talk a lot on the phone because I know that they're not into phone stuff. Every once in a while, though, we'll connect and get caught up. But really, the connection, the sacredness of the connection happens when we see each other. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. And I appreciate, that's what I appreciate about our connection and our friendship. One, we have longevity, and so because of that, the history of our connection and friendship, we know each other's kind of rhythms and patterns and things like that. And so, like you said, you can get a sense of, I'm getting a sense he might be a little off, and I'm just going to check in on that. And I appreciate that because I have friends, I'll use air quotes, that don't do that. But I think intuition is a good word. That something just didn't seem quite right. Something seemed a little off, and I'm going to check in. And you take that extra step to check in, not just kind of wonder about it and let it go, but actually take action on that.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps you, I think, in that inner circle for me. And I'll even say that it's something that I think my mom even appreciates. My mom lives in California. I'm here in Utah. And so she worries. She worries about her baby, right? Who's nearing 60, right?
Choice.
But her question as of late has been, who can you call, or who can I call? So this is her speaking. Who can I call if something happens to you? Who do I get in contact with? Bruce and Jerry. I mean, you're like top.
Yeah.
Bruce and Jerry, and I've got a couple others. There's like 4 people in that top tier list.
Yeah.
Because I consider them, my closest people, who look after me, and she appreciates that. Yeah.
When we had your little birthday dinner,
Yes.
I sent that selfie to her.
Oh, that's right.
And she's like, oh, I so appreciate this.
Oh.
I sent it to her because I thought, well, she just needs to know that her baby boy isn't home alone.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I would say I just hear this issue coming up so much with clients, and in particular, gay clients. and I think if I just met a young man, he's probably 36, 37, who, where did he come here from? I think he came here from Colorado. Actually saw his picture on Grindr. And And I thought, wow, that's a new face, and looks like he worked out. And in his profile, he said he was new in town. And so I just said, hi, welcome to Utah. And we've been kind of just bantering and chatting ever since. Nothing like flirtatious, or just kind of bantering, and him asking kind of like a read for the crowd. But my thought in connecting with him was, now here's someone who probably feels alone. And now, I even made an observation. I don't know if I want to give out all the details for his privacy, but he's a person of color who has a job that probably isolates him from mainstream community. I'll put it that way. And so I thought, I'm just going to reach out and be nice to this guy, introduce him to Mindfully Gay.
Right, sure.
And just in bantering with him and chatting with him a little bit. And he loves working out and is looking for someone to work out with. And I told him, I said, well, I'll check out and see if you can come join us on occasion when we're at the gym here in Salt Lake City. And I just thought, how interesting. Like when I'm at the gym, I'll see people on Facebook or Instagram or even Grindr or Scruff, and I'll recognize them at the gym. And I'll always say kind of hello on the apps. But if they respond back, I'll say, hey, I've seen you at the gym. It's okay if I just come up and say hi. Never had anyone of any age category say no. In fact, what they say is, I would love that. And I probably practice that a good 75, 80% of the time. And what I do know is when I'm at the gym, they may not be like in any part of the inner circle of the target, but when I go to the gym, there are faces and people that I know, that I recognize, and it's a friendly engagement. And in some cases, there's a gentleman that I've chatted with who's actually a doctor who is interested in what I do. And we're going to have a coffee to talk a little bit about what we do. And he's looking for a place to refer clients. So I thought, what a great networking opportunity. And we don't have a lot in common other than we work out at the same gym. But some of my long-term friendships started out 20 or 30 years ago at the gym.
Right.
Allie and some other folks.
Yeah.
They're still gay, straight, whatever. They're still significant and people that I love in my life, but I met them because I dared to say hello.
Yeah. And I love that you do that. And even like in today's era with social media and even the hookup apps, I'm using air quotes again, and using it in that way, where you might see someone, maybe read their profile, learn that they may be from out of town or have something in common interest like working out or food or therapy work or something like that. It's like, oh, that might, it catches your attention, and you might just, hey, you say hello, you make a connection. Because I think, as we bring in the idea of, adult friendship, gay adult friendship, I think there's this need, this hunger, this thirst for connecting, right?
Yeah.
And if someone else, because like I said, I certainly can fit in this category. If I'm not the one that's taking that first step to say hello, then who is?
Right.
Who's going to do it? I can't just depend on them, but you're taking that step. You see them on the app, common interest, hello, and then if you might set up something, hey, let's do a coffee, or hey, if I see you at the gym, there's a connection that has been made. Yeah, they might be in that outer ring on that target, but it's still an important ring to be in, especially in our community as gay men. If you're feeling so alone, but here's someone who reached out and said hi to me, and so grateful and thankful that you're going to recognize me and say hi to me in the gym or out in public somewhere. That's huge.
Yeah. There's this young guy, I think he's I say young, 35. At least his profile says 35, so probably 40. I've seen this guy at the gym quite a bit, and God, this is going to sound so stereotypical, but our gym has this program with some recovery programs. And so there's a lot of people who are in recovery who come to the gym. And, they look kind of rough, right? Tattoos, piercings, whatever. They're always friendly, very cordial. And I make a point to acknowledge them, hi, how you doing? How's your workout, etc. But there's this one guy that has continually showed up, and my first thought was, oh, he must be part of their program. But he's been coming for a while now. He always comes in, and he's kind of shy, but he kind of has that kind of young queer vibe. The piercings, tattoos on his face, attractive young guy, but always kind of sticks to himself. Well, I happened to see him on, this just happened last night. He was on Scruff. And I thought, I guess for me, it just felt kind of validating. Like, okay, he is queer. And his face was on there. And so I sent my face and I said, hey, we share the same gym together. And I thought this is going to go one or two ways. Here's Grandpa being a pervert, or he'll be happy to be acknowledged. Right. And he responded quite vigorously, like, hey, how you doing? And, we exchanged names, and I said, well, now when I see you at the gym, is it okay if I just say hi? And he's like, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And then, he says, I feel like a loner at the gym.
Oh.
And I thought, I can see that. I could see where people might stand back a little bit because they're not sure how to read this person. Right. And so I haven't seen him at the gym since, but I thought next time I see him, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to make it a point to acknowledge him and be friendly. And it's not like I have deep conversations with people, but enough that there's a wave or a fist bump or how are things going? Because people are there to work out.
Yeah, they're to work out. You don't want to get all up in their business and all of that.
But we all hunger for community.
Community and just acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Just the wave is.
And I think the challenge for us as gay men is the apps create a certain kind of accessibility to getting what we want sexually.
Yes.
And we've talked about this before. We kind of build our sense of acceptability on our fuckability.
Right.
And the whole goal of Mindfully Gay is body, mind, and spirit. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was kind of complaining about how, he's my age, but he was just saying how the young guys don't pay attention to him anymore. And I said, when I was their age, I didn't pay attention to older guys either. I said, I think it's relevant that we're alive because our generation didn't necessarily thrive during the 80s in this way. I said, but I'm very welcoming of that transitional space in my life where I may be seen as an elder, a mentor, a daddy, right? That it doesn't have to be sexual. It can be social, it can be spiritual, it can be a sense of continuity in our concept of community.
Right. And I think that's exactly what you're doing, is kind of breaking the mold or breaking the boundary of what these apps project, I guess, I can go on the app and kind of get this particular thing, and that's what that's for, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm thinking about potentially saying hello to someone in public, it's, am I saying hello because in my head I'm thinking that they're thinking, oh, is he trying to hit on me? Or I suddenly go into gay panic. I go into gay panic thinking that they might go into gay panic because I'm talking to a guy and I don't know if he's gay or straight, and they might think, was this guy coming on to me because he said hi in the locker room? And so all this, distracting thoughts and feelings get in the way of just saying hi, right? But I think, but it's exactly that, being able to kind of break that mold of, the hookup apps don't have to just be hookup apps.
Yeah.
They can just be contact apps, way of connecting with another person that you may share some common interests, including who you're sexually attracted to.
Yeah. Well, I like that idea. Frankly, I was telling you about the guy who's new in town. Everything in his, maybe one reason I reached out to him too is everything in his profile was, I'm new in town, looking to make friends, looking to make connections. And I thought,
well, he's asking.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm on the apps. I'm not necessarily looking for hookups. I love chatting with people.
Yeah.
And sometimes if it's too aggressive, too fast, I even say, hey, slow down. Do you have a name?
Right.
So kind of that tangent was, my question was, so how would we, as a therapist, right? I think if I have somebody who's kind of new in town or newly coming out, I met this gentleman last week, coming out later in life, has no idea how to get connected. And I wouldn't say he's looking for sexual partners. I think he's looking for a sense of camaraderie, community, right? And probably not the best fit for Mindfully Gay. I just don't think he gravitates at that space that we're trying to create community around. I think, well, how would we counsel? How would we talk to our friends? I sometimes feel like our narratives about the community, ours being whoever we're talking to at the time, right? Like if you think about when we were coming of age, right, you just went to the bars. And I still not into drinking, but bars was part of community. And it took someone kind of helping me understand that this is where community is.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's seedy parts of that, but so, there's parallel in the straight community too.
Sure.
Right? But I guess how do we help people get started in that place of connection?
I like the idea, maybe the advice of, since we are in this mobile age and apps and social media and stuff, and so if you've got a profile on something, if your interest is, sexual hookups, great. And you make that clear, I guess, in your profile. But like what you came across, someone who's, hey, I'm new in town, I'm looking for connections, want to make some friends, someone's going to respond to that. And so maybe the advice and a starting point for some people is like, if you are on the apps and you're looking to broaden or expand your connections with community, maybe that can be in your profile so that you're expanding or just not using the apps for one thing. Maybe you are, and that's fine. And, I'm also using this app to I want to make some friends.
We should start a trend. So how on the apps you can identify, I'm an otter, I'm a bear, I'm a twink, right? We should have a butterfly.
Oh.
For social butterfly.
Yes, I like that.
Right? So if it says butterfly on your app, that means you're there to make community.
You help to build community. I like that. Something like that. But isn't it so interesting that we will create all these identities about our pecs, about our butts, about our dicks, but we don't create profiles about our personality, about our likability, the qualities that we bring that are beyond the physicality. Yeah, and I think that kind of matches what I mentioned earlier, about making friends as a kid, same milestones, same age, interests, you're in the same classroom. There's a lot of kind of social factors and probably some intellectual and emotional factors involved in making friends. And then that kind of almost gets put to the wayside when it comes to the apps, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about physical appearance,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah. Well, Grinder and Scruff and Sniffles, or Sniffies. Take note.
Take note.
We want a butterfly symbol so that those who are looking for community and connection will find each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this today. I had lunch with a friend yesterday, and I was just reflecting on it, and I thought, I have such an eclectic world of people in my life. And I love that. People who do not think like me politically, who do not think like me sexually or morally, people who have different cultures and traditions and ways of existing. And there is such texture in that.
Mm-hmm. There is.
And I think the gay queer community is built around the concept of diversity. And yet we get edged out because we don't understand maybe transgender men. We get edged out because we don't understand how race plays out and the disparities. And so we segregate. That's just no fun. Mm-mm. And it's not who we are as a people. Our magic is about our interconnectedness and bondedness.
Absolutely.
Our power and our magic is dependent on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we nurture each other and feed each other when we get to celebrate that and acknowledge that, and certainly not put people in, not pigeonhole people and segregate folks. You're right.
We know the other day our neighbors are from India, and we got to spend a day with them where they were teaching us how to cook Indian food.
Yes.
And that was a long day, but it was so rich because I've known this couple since we've moved into the neighborhood, and the nuances and the attitude about food was so interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wish we had more of that in my own personal cultural experience. Mm-hmm. And I was so grateful that they shared that with us.
Right. Yeah.
What would that look like if our community center was really designed around the idea of an eclectic community sharing with each other?
Wouldn't you say, though, that there was a time when there was that our gay and lesbian community centers were more around community building and socializing? I mean, I can remember both in California and here in the early days where you go to the community center, the gay community center, and it had this coffee shop vibe or a place where you can hang out, chit chat, play games, talk. That's not present anymore.
When they got rid of the coffee shop, the issue of diversity then became a competition.
Oh.
And it was less about communal and more about the things that divide us.
Right.
I think the smartest thing they ever did was putting in that little coffee shop.
Yes, that was great.
Yeah, and it lost that vibe when they got rid of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here in Utah,
Yeah.
but Utah struggles.
Yeah.
Help me out. The issue of diversity is not a broadly integrated concept in this state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
Well, I mean, I know when I go to California or New York or other places, I'm just like,
wow.
Like I love the richness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to say about, what was I going to say?
I was going to say something.
Yeah, and now I just lost my train of thought.
Well, I kind of want to summarize a little bit where we're at,
Yeah,
because
please.
we were talking about adult friendship,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked a little bit about, is reciprocity, tit for tat, a necessary component? I would say for me personally, like, I like to be social. I like to do social things at my home. I like to invite people into my home. Not everyone shares that. And so for me, it never feels like tit for tat. I'm just grateful that people are willing to show up. And I love getting to that point of the process where we're all sitting at the table, shooting the shit and laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't know that tit for tat matters to me. And when I listen to people who are committed to the tit for tat, I just think, I often, my inner voice is, wow, you're really censoring an opportunity that you say you want, but you're not willing to cultivate. And so we talked about reciprocity. I don't know. What do you think about that? That's my opinion.
Well,
am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. My position might be a little bit different, because I know I respond well to reciprocity in maintaining a friendship, especially when it's kind of in the outer rings or those middle rings where I've known people maybe for a long time, or even maybe trying to establish or create a connection with someone, that I think I do pretty well with, like, the text and things like that. Hey, how you doing? What's up? Good morning. And how's your day? That kind of stuff. I do that all the time. And the ones that do that or reciprocate tend to sit in a closer circle to me, because sometimes what I'm hoping for, I guess, is that I don't always have to initiate that they will initiate that. So in a way that is a tit for tat, but then it becomes this easy flow and reciprocation. Like, if I don't say hello, they're going to say hello, during the day or sometime during the week. But when I feel like I'm always doing that, at least that's my perspective, that this is for me, I'm like thinking, this is too much work. If I'm the only one putting out, so to speak, and not getting much in return, then I tend to back off. And those folks start to go to the outer rings of my circle. So I find value in that. I do find value too in just the social things, because that does feed me, and I'm sure it feeds them. But just kind of the day to day, as if I was like in grade school or something, and, hey Jerry, how you doing? Did you do your homework? That kind of thing. It's that with, I think I still have and want to have relationships like that, even if it's via text or even through the apps. I communicate through the apps sometimes too. I have friends, air quotes, that live in different states. But we're communicating almost daily.
Yeah. So we disagree.
Well, okay. And that's the end of our show.
Off the target. No, I don't think we disagree. I just had to say that. I just think I guess here's how I would assess it. I know that what I'm getting from you is you. And I don't feel like I have to compete with that or keep up with that. I just think, this is John, and I like playing with John. And Nick and other friends have their own kind of personalities that come through, like my friends in Colorado. Again, I wouldn't say we don't have the same kind of contact as I have with you, but I know if I needed anything, they would be a phone call away or a text away.
Right.
It might take them 3 days to get to it. but I know that about them.
Yes.
I know, and I would hope that they recognize that in me. But I know that as who they are, and I respect and value that. And I think they, I know they know me well enough, because they often reflect that back. I know how Nick is, or Drew, or other people in my life. right? I just kind of know the rhythm and the nature, and I don't want them to change who they are to accommodate me. And I think they come to rely on me to show up in a particular way.
Mm-hmm. Would you account that to, in part, like our relationship, longevity? Even if it's been even like getting to know Nick and his partner.
Yeah.
It's been a couple years, right? I mean, that's a relatively short period of time,
Right.
but that's still a significant amount of time to establish a friendship and a connection and knowing each other's rhythms, and how you associate with each other and socialize with each other.
So here's what I would put. To answer your question, yes. I think the piece that's important for people to recognize is, I'll take myself. I'm a therapist. When I'm in therapy, my phone is on do not disturb. So sometimes people may text me at 10 or 11 in the morning and not hear from me till 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I'm putting them off.
Correct.
Right? But because of the nature of what I'm doing. And sometimes people get a little butthurt about that. A text means a response. And I think sometimes we're quick to get butthurt early in the game. As opposed to a willingness to check in. And, you mentioned, with Nick and his partner, those are relatively new relationships in our lives. How I relate to Nick's partner as opposed to Nick are very different because they're very different people. And it took some time for me to kind of figure out how they show up, how they respond, what their personal space is, and what is open game.
Right.
And the willingness to check in, right? I know lately, when we're chatting, what I have figured out is I know you have some 6 a.m. appointments. So if I have to have a long conversation with you, I try to do it at 4:30 in the morning. I try to do it earlier so that I'm not interfering in your ability to get ready. And so I think it's about that checking in and being conscious and not taking something personal. Because I want to love you, not my version of who I think you should be. I want to love Nick, not because I need Nick to be something to accommodate me, because I love what he brings and his partner and et cetera.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I appreciate with your friendship and those that I would like to make connections with, that there's one, that rhythm and that understanding and that willingness to check in, and that awareness of like, oh, well, Jerry, he has a certain type of job. He's not going to be able to respond right away. And so, I can certainly send that text knowing that I won't get a response until a little bit later. And that's perfect because I know you know me, we know each other's rhythms that way. But yeah, there can be some little kinks in the chain in trying to create relationship when there's some static around that. Like, well, you didn't respond.
Here's a good, and I hear this all the time, right? Someone will say, well, I keep inviting so-and-so over for dinner, but they never invite me over, right? Or I feel like I'm the one that always has to instigate something. And my response to those clients is, well, do they accept your invitation? Right? And Bruce and I, we have bought 3 houses together throughout the 100 years of our relationship. And in every instance that we have bought a house, we think about holidays. We think about the people who come and go out of our house. We always prioritize having a guest room. The financial nature of our lives allows for, but we're constantly, a value that we share in our relationship, probably me more than Bruce, but we do share it, is the sense of community and accommodating friends.
Absolutely.
And so
true.
I know that not all of my friends have that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some people look at their personal space very differently than how I look at my personal space.
Right.
Neither is right, neither is wrong. And the ability to be fluid and flexible,
Yeah.
I think, allows for things to happen. Now, it's interesting. We have some friends who we will do dinner with, and it's interesting. Their preference is to do meal prep and bring it to our house because their house is very small. And I think they have some consciousness about that. It doesn't matter to me, but I just think it's a very interesting approach, and we're flexible with that. And so, again, you can respond to things. The part that we have control over is if I want friends, if I want community, then how flexible am I willing to be in the invitation to show up in a way that allows me to fully be present,
Right.
but to allow my friends to be fully present in how they are and to not judge it, to not question it. And if I have a concern about it, to say, John, what's that about? What's going on? How can I support you in this?
Yeah.
Is a very different conversation than to make a judgment, build a resentment, and then say, okay, you're not for me.
Yeah. Or ghost,
Yeah.
ghost people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think these are good lessons to remind ourselves. Just that I'm being reminded of what you just said, just that fluidity of how you're relating to folks and putting judgment aside and just allowing the person or people to be themselves and allow them just to show up as they are. And then you can kind of do the same. And then I think that's what gels into friendships and connections because you can see each other's, fluidity, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think there's what are those things that influence you? Grew up in California. I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in a very rural place. I have a really strong Italian background. Italians love community parties, family gatherings, right? You grew up in
Oakland.
How rural is that?
Quite urban.
You hold your pearls tight.
Very urban, but even just from, growing up as a black kid, just very family oriented, and really kind of sticking really to your
protect each other.
You protect each other, your family unit, and just the little outer circle of that, or the inner circle of that. But certainly that's where we learn in some respect, or at least culturally, are how we associate with each other. And then being able to take that outside into a broader culture, I guess, and kind of integrate it, outwardly, whether it's, for me, it was, I grew up in a neighborhood, and it's still like this, I think. We're the only black family in our neighborhood.
Oh.
Of course, black family, but black neighborhood? No. It was mostly a white neighborhood. And so just being able to be fluid within that. And then hello, gay kid, from what I can recall as I think back about my childhood in my neighborhood, I was the only gay kid, Yeah. And so just another layer of, kind of integrating into kind of a broader culture, and then kind of being able to, I don't know, it's hard to kind of put this into words and just to describe what I had to do to connect with people, whether it's someone that's black that looks like me, or someone who's gay who has a similar lifestyle as I do.
Yeah,
it's very whoa, a lot of seats on this roller coaster ride.
Then you moved to Utah,
and then I moved to Utah. But the thing is, because of how I grew up and where I grew up, it made moving here actually quite easy. Because I easily integrated into a non-black culture at home, even, and so that so people were worried for me, like, are there other Black people in and Utah? I'm like, I'm sure there are, but that's not a concern for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that I needed necessarily to make connections. My connections were through my psychology work. I made friends and acquaintances that way. Later became fitness and dance. There was that community. Yoga, that became my community. So, and certainly my gay friends. So I had, like you were talking about, with the textures and layers of friendships, and the value of friendship comes in many forms. And I think I was able to nurture that and establish that here as well.
Yeah. So what I would say to someone who's like, gee, I'd like to get to know John more, right? I would say, well, wow, experience John from the context of those experiences, as opposed to expecting him to show up in some way that, right? Sometimes we get so convinced that our narrative about things is the right one. Bruce, like I said, Bruce and I have like this really fluid, like people are coming in and out of our house all the time. And we have some friends who are just like, aren't you worried about this or that? Or like, in their mind, security and safety. But I also knew they grew up in a very inner city kind of a world where perhaps if that was my point of reference, I might have lots of bolts on my door.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's like, how do we give permission for other people to show up in our lives? Like this young man I met at the gym. I don't know how that is going to grow as a friendship or a relationship, but just because he has an unusual look, for me, that's intriguing. That's inviting. Like, oh, I want to know your story.
Me too. I'm like that too.
Versus some people would be like, they might automatically exclude themselves from the story. And I know a bad habit that I have is, like at the gym, if I see someone who has the kind of body that I really admire as far as fitness and muscle and that, I retreat. I'm like, I can't compete with that. And lately, my workout partner supports me in this because he'll punch me in the gut. But when I start to have that mindset, he calls me out on it. And so and I'm like, well, fuck you, I'll do this. And I'll go up and I'll say, hey, great workout. You're looking. What's interesting is that I've had people say that to me, and I don't take offense to it.
Right.
But my narrative, right, kind of disqualifies me from acknowledging that you might potentially want to talk to me.
Yeah.
And I say this because I don't think I'm the only gay guy who does this.
Yeah.
And I've never had anyone respond to that in a way that made me walk away feeling defeated. I've only walked away thinking, at the very least, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah.
Because now I know who I am.
Yeah. And it takes the weight off your shoulders, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah. It's a sigh of relief.
I think I talked in a podcast about this young couple that's always holding hands at the gym. And I kind of did that, like, I'm afraid to talk to them kind of thing. And then I finally did. And then it's interesting, for a while, they never really kind of acknowledged me again. Until here lately, now they kind of do like the head nod. And I'm like, okay, maybe that was my story. Maybe they shifted and grew. Maybe I shifted and grew. But now we can kind of do the nod.
Yeah, yeah. Just that
I don't
acknowledgement.
need more than that.
Don't need more than that. Exactly. Yeah. One last little bit that just reminded me of just my relationship with you and with Bruce. And as far as ways to connect with me, with John Cottrell, my love language is food. And cheeseburgers, because I like to bake, I like to cook. And so one of the things that I know Bruce and I do, or at least he sends me these wonderful Instagram reels of recipes, or these wonderful, beautiful delights, and I'm like, and I'm like, he's speaking my language, and my heart is just full. And so, what that brings me to, as far as, what can you do, as far as, how can I connect with people, make more friends, or just connect and build community or be a part of a community. One, be like Jerry. I mean, remember that we're putting all these stories in our own heads about maybe just saying hi to somebody, thinking that, oh, they wouldn't want to hear from me. That might be a false narrative, right? Just say hi, and you'll be relieved, and they will probably be very grateful that you said hi to them, right? So I think there's that piece. And if you happen to be on the apps, I'd say, fill in some of those description things. If you're looking for more than just the hookup, and you are looking for friends or connections or community, I think say that. Say that. In my, profile, I think mine says something like, say hi to me, I like to chat. And that's, an invitation for people to say hi to me. I'm not in there for the hookups, but I do like to connect. So I think maybe that could be a start for some folks. If you're looking for community, say that you are.
Yeah.
Put down some of your interests, because someone's going to say, oh, I like bowling too, and and text you back.
Do you know what's interesting? And I know you just celebrated your 41st birthday, but that's me shaking my head no. I hear people frequently say how at a particular age, just how challenging it is, just like on that instant. And I just think it's not making friends that's challenging. The challenging part is confronting my narrative that holds me hostage.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
That's the challenge.
That is the challenge.
Am I willing to evolve and expand in a way that gives my existence relevance,
Yes.
whether the other person acknowledges it or not?
That's so key right there.
And when you recognize that you're the gift, and that people have the opportunity to get to know you, you will attract those who will appreciate you. There's some shamanic little twist to this. I was talking to someone in Grindr this morning. He hit me up. Do you party? And I wrote back, I do not party. But I wrote back, I didn't write that back. I said, I only party with balloons and streamers. And then I skipped down and I said, protect your magic.
Ooh.
Be careful how you take care of yourself, and know that just because you ask that question, I hold a little concern for you, and you're always welcome to chat with me if you'd like to.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And you know what? He wrote back and he goes, wow, that was so nice to hear.
Yeah.
And we chatted a little bit.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I have to come do this podcast, but yeah, protect your magic.
Oh, there's the lesson right there.
Yeah.
That's the lesson right there. Remember your magic, protect your magic. And like you said, you've got a gift. You've got superpowers. And when someone gets to know you for who you are and to see that magic, everyone benefits.
Amen. Well, that was different than the last friendship one we did. Maybe we've evolved.
Maybe we have.
I'll take it.
Older and wiser.
The one thing my elders have taught, Melodoma before he died, Bear Boy before he died, Charles who's 90, all of them just always embrace the idea to the very last minute, their willingness to evolve. And to me, out of all these relationships, in fact, we're just talking to Ruben about this last night, and he was reiterating the same thing.
Wow.
Right? We are magical creatures that have this capacity to create exactly what we want. And friendships and community is very accessible.
Very accessible.
If we're open to it.
Absolutely. Wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining us and listening to this conversation. We invite you to participate in the conversation. So feel free to find us on Instagram at mindfully_gay. go to mindfullygay.com, see our events. Some of them are free. We do have a retreat that's coming up, and you can actually text us, right? Is that what's available on the?
Yeah, on the podcast, there's a mechanism where people can actually send us a text.
Yeah, so if you have a question or an observation or a thought, hey, reach out to us. And it might, turn into a conversation, a connection, and maybe help steering each other into our continued evolution. And it might even spark a conversation where we have a guest on, or a new idea for an episode topic.
Yes. Thank you.
All righty. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. We hope it sparks something in you around connection and community.
We'd love to hear your stories about friendship, authenticity, and how you're creating your own chosen family.
Share with us on Instagram at mindfully_gay and visit mindfullygay.com to find upcoming free social events and retreats.
If this episode resonated with you, please rate and review it on Spotify or Apple Podcast. It really helps others find our content and join the conversation.
Until next time, stay mindful, stay proud, and stay connected.